NFTrippy's release with us is immediately, it hits so many marks for me for what I think is awesome about doing an NFT set like this. You start off with very engaging artwork. The artwork that's been created for NFTrippy is fun. There's interesting elements. There's elements of animation, and it's colorful, and it's a happy looking set, which is nice, man. Like I deal with a lot of pretty grim and dark artwork, so seeing
Mm-hmm.
something this bright and colorful on my screen makes me feel good.
If you want to see more videos and interviews like this from influential people in tech, finance, and sports, subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit the bell to be alerted. And go a step further and join the YouTube membership area for early releases of videos like this. I'm out of here. Ha! It's your boy Crypto Blood, and welcome to another Kicking It session. Today, I've got a team member from Facings.io. They are an NFT platform, as you guys can see on the screen there, all about NFTs, launching them the way they should be launched. And I have a special launch coming up with this team, NFTrippy. We'll talk about that NFT release here shortly. It is coming up. We'll get more details about that, but I want to talk to the guy behind it or assisting in it. He'll kind of give us the details, but Adam Swartz from AdamSwartzDraws.com. It's great to have you on, man. What's going on with you?
Good to see you again, sir. It's good to be here. Not much, man. We've been pretty busy last week. We just had a launch Friday, and that's been going real well. So now we're just kind of pivoting to the next project, which I believe is going to be coming up here.
And
A lot of irons in the fire, and I'm still adjusting to this position as lead artist at Facing. It's a lot of fun, but it's incredibly different from what I've done historically in the art. So always hard.
yeah, I want to talk about that because I'm not familiar or know other artists who come from the tattoo world
Mhm.
over to the NFT side. So that's interesting. I really wanted to interview you and chat with you about that
Sure.
because I'm sure you have a different take on it. To me, it's harder to draw on a medium of like skin as a medium versus digital canvas or even a physical canvas. Let's talk about first your background. I see all the tats on you, and
Yeah.
did you do any of your own tattoos? Tell me
Yep.
about your background, where you're from, where you're at, all that good stuff before we get into the
Yeah, right
release.
on. I grew up in kind of the northern suburbs of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I currently live in St. Paul, just across the river, capital city of Minnesota. I've been an illustrator professionally for 14 years, and early on it was real indie, like underground stuff, comics, and album covers and concert posters and stuff like that. And comic books were always kind of my passion and my focus. And that's actually how I met Lars, company Zuschwert, who's the chief creative officer at Basics. And I have known each other for a little over a decade. We met at a comic, and we always just kind of kept in touch. And then about 10 years ago, I started tattooing. Just I ran into a random post on Craigslist about a guy who was looking for an apprentice and applied and got accepted. And, honestly, I didn't even think I'd do it for that long. I thought maybe I'd tattoo for like 6 months until I figured out my next step as an illustrator. But the work was steady and it was challenging and it was engaging and it paid well. And now it's 10 years later and I'm tattooing still. How I got involved with facings in the NFT world is Lars actually asked me if I wanted to collaborate with him on some pieces for some garbage pail kits for Topps Digital.
Yep, I
He was
remember
like,
that.
"Hey man, like I can draw these up. Do you want to come in and paint them?" Because Lars is a phenomenal illustrator, but he focuses a lot more on like penciling and inking. He does color work too, but it's something that I've just had a little bit more of a hand in doing with tattooing as well. So we did some collaborative pieces for them, and it worked well. We found we worked really well together. So when the next project came up, he's like, "You want to do it again?" And I said, "Sure." And then around that time, Facing was launched, and they brought me on as an independent contractor, and I started talking, or like I was present for the early meetings on Crypto Writer, and I worked on Skulls with Lars and Brian. And after Skulls wrapped, they offered me the position of lead artist. And
Nice.
it took me a long time to even really figure out what NFTs were,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I'm kind of a Luddite. Like I can do the art stuff real well, but the online world in general, like I got outclassed back in the days of Tumblr. So like
Wow.
I'm constantly kind of just scrambling to keep up with everything. And
How do you feel? First, as full disclosure, EOS Detroit
Mhm,
is the parent company of Facings.
mhm.
We spun that out it's been like 6 months now, 4 months, something like that.
So yeah, 4 to 6 months, somewhere
Yeah,
in
about
there.
6 months, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Facings is a part of the EOS Detroit family of companies. So,
Mhm.
Swartz, I've known him since he jumped on board doing the
Yeah.
garbage pail stuff. Excellent work you and Lars did on
Thank
that
you.
project. Uh, so, you said you're not really the digital guy. How do you feel, truly, how do you feel about this NFT craze or
Sure.
phase, or is it a fad? Is it what are your thoughts on this space today? And as an investor, you know, kind of give us your feedback on how do you feel about this market.
Yeah, absolutely. I've put a lot of thought into this because the art community that I'm a part of online was split right down the middle when the NFT boom hit. A lot of people were immediately against it permanently. I think largely due to a couple of articles that were written that were just kind of not, I don't think they were deliberately misleading, but I think they were a little underinformed, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
they suffered from some confirmation bias.
Yep,
Um, and those articles got really, really widely shared.
I sure did.
So a lot of people got their information about what crypto was and what NFTs were from those articles. So they made very strong opinions. It was a very polarizing thing. On the other hand, artists that I've known for, decades, who I never would assume would have leaned into the NFT thing, have gotten really, really into. How I feel about it is that I don't think it's a fad. I think it's a medium, just like anything else. I think right now it's a very new and exciting one because there aren't as many accepted norms within the NFT world of what an NFT is, because there's crafting and gamification, and there's sound, and there's animation, and there's visual art, and there's still no real ceiling on what you can do with it and what it will bring to the table innovation wise. Because all art in its base form is an attempt at communication. Whether it's a song or a film or a poem or an illustration, you're trying to communicate something that direct speech is not adequate for. And the digital world brings a lot of opportunities to that you can't really get in a more traditional fashion. So
Right.
I think that it's important. One of the things that I've brought up to a lot of people who have had contrary opinions to NFTs is that NFTs give artists an opportunity to provide legitimacy to their digital artwork online. As long as the internet has existed, visual artists specifically have had to make a choice. You can either put your work online and it's going to be stolen, or you cannot be online and largely be ignored
Mm.
outside of the traditional art circles. So with NFTs, you have the ability to say, yeah, one of the arguments I hear a lot is, well, couldn't you just right click and save it anyway? And it's like, well, yeah, you could, but that's theft. You're stealing somebody's intellectual property when you do that. And with an NFT, you're providing somebody who wants to own that with an opportunity to do so through legitimate, trackable means, through the way that it's documented throughout the blockchain. And I think that's really important because, it happened with music and it happened with film too. As soon as the internet existed, people started using it to pirate
Can
things.
someone say Napster?
Mm-hmm. It's a prime example. So
Yep.
music got online, people
Mm-hmm.
started to trade it and steal it and share it. And the eventual solution to that was the birth of music streaming sites, places like Spotify and Pandora and things like that, where you can collect the music, you can listen to the music, you can travel with the music, But you don't actually own the music. What you
Right.
own is access to the music. And while that has largely bailed out record companies,
Hasn't done the artist any justice.
no, it's horrible for the artists, right? And the same thing has happened with films. You have Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Discovery Plus, Paramount Plus. I think honestly, I'm subscribed to about 15 streaming services right now, but I still buy DVDs
Mm.
because I want to be able to watch things if the internet goes out, which it does occasionally do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there was never really an option for that for visual artists because, how often is it that everybody's done it where you're looking for a background for your phone or, for something to print off to put in, homemade gift cards, anything. Anytime you go to Google and you right click and save an image, odds are you're doing that without the permission of the person who created that.
Right.
And
And
to
and you
some,
know the thing about the misconception, I like how you touched on the whole fact that you can right click. People would say, "Hey, I could just save the image, and I'll have the same thing."
mhm,
Yeah, you'll have the same content, but you
mhm,
won't have that signature behind it that says, "I, Adam Swartz owns this particular piece of art."
yep,
Right? So that's where the blockchain really protects and adds value to that art because now you can't copy it. You can copy
exactly.
the contents of it, but you can't copy the fingerprints of
Yep.
who actually owns it at that particular time. I think that's revolutionary.
Well, yeah, and it actually, I mean, there's a precedent for that in the fine art world too, called
Mm-hmm.
provenance. Where like when a painter created a painting, not all the time, but in best case scenarios, a provenance was created with it, which was just a document that accompanied that painting, and it would be verified and witnessed and signed every time that painting changed ownership. So when you got the painting, you could track it all the way back, hopefully, to the original artist to make sure that it was authentic because for as long as people have been making and selling art, there have been people who have been bootlegging and selling art. Because there's always, that's the gist of it. Is something that I think a lot of artists unfortunately have to realize very early on in their career is that as long as there are artists that are making art, there are going to be people that are going to attempt to exploit that art and that artist for financial gain. We were talking about that a while back. Lars and I were talking about how it's the assumption that you're going to get screwed over as a visual artist at some point in your career is just like a reality.
Mm.
And so it's almost like as long as you know ahead of time that you're not going to get the accreditation or the compensation that you necessarily deserve. Like just knowing that you're going to get screwed over in a particular situation, having that acknowledged is almost enough for most artists, which is a really sad state of affairs. And I think one of the things that NFTs do is they allow artists of all mediums to take back more ownership and control of their career. While there is obviously still a middleman in a lot of ways, it's different than like, if you want to get a comic book published and out to the entire country, you have to go through at least a mid-level publisher. Otherwise, you're not going to get the advertising, you're not going to get the social media noise and views, and just the logistics of trying to produce a product, contact the shops, mail out all of the products, handle any issues with shipping, promote your product, all that stuff. Doing that while trying to make like a full 22-page comic book every month is it's just not feasible. There aren't enough hours in the day to do that. And so with the direct market access, NFTs provide career opportunities for artists, not only in, your more stereotypically associative areas like, Hollywood and America and Western culture and such, to be able to participate on a near a more equal footing,
Mm-hmm.
but also you get people from other countries that have much, much weaker economies where art is being valued even less than it is here because art has a high value here, but the work of artists in America is still regulated to a point of negligible. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was an infographic that came out during the COVID shutdowns, and I'll never forget this. The site had done a poll of the most essential jobs and the least essential jobs, um, to show the public what they thought should and shouldn't be shut down during COVID. And the number one least essential job by popular vote was artists.
Wow.
However, the information was presented in an illustrated infographic.
Right.
So some artists had to deal with the fact while creating this graphic that the public at large thought that they
That's
were
interesting.
useless, you know? And
Yeah.
so I've heard stories of artists in, China and Vietnam and in Brazil and in, in the Eastern Bloc of Europe that could never have hoped to make a living as an artist through traditional means that are now not only able to support themselves through NFTs, but also be able to support their families. They're able to have be the breadwinner of their families instead of having that filthy art habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's really important for the respectability of artists and the legitimacy of their craft. When it comes to the investing element of it, that's something that I don't know if I'm the best person in the world to talk to about it because I have a very complex relationship with the idea of art as an investment. And it stems from the fine art world versus the world I come from. Like I come from a world of indie illustration, underground illustration, zines, comic books, local bands, concert posters, stuff like that. And there's definitely a collector's market for those things. But even, super low run screen printed illustration by somebody like Pusshead or John Baisley or Daniel Danger, juggernauts of talent in this particular field of screen printed posters, even your most rare posters from them might go for a couple $100 on.
Okay.
But then you get into galleries and you see these paintings that are selling for 20, 30, 40, hundreds of thousands of dollars by modern living contemporary artists. The most famous recent example I think would be the dude who duct taped the banana to the wall of a
Yes.
gallery, right?
Yep. I remember that.
And
It's all
art,
perceived value, though,
it
right? So
is,
we
it
can
is, it's all
think. I
perceived.
think that's insane. The
Yeah,
duct taped banana. And
uh,
it
yeah,
comes with he'll come and put a new banana in there, but I just think it's insane. But evidently, someone saw the value in it and they purchased it.
well, and that's the issue that comes to me is that the difference between high art and low art is always inclusive of commercial art, art that working artists make for a living, whereas high art is typically attributed to gallery shows and the financial elites. And a lot there's an argument to be made that a lot of the more expensive fine art, the reason the values were attached to those things initially was because you were talking about paintings from artists that have been dead for a long time.
Right.
So there was only so many pieces of artwork of theirs that existed that you could
Yep.
own. As you moved further into the future with contemporary art, artwork became a wonderful way for the very wealthy to hide their assets.
That's right.
And so it wasn't actually about the artwork itself. It wasn't about the emotional maturity or the technical
Right.
ability or the evocative nature of the artwork. It wasn't about somebody seeing something that somebody else created and it changing their perspective, even if it was just for a few minutes. It was about saying, I have so much money that I can spend the combined annual income of three working class families on this painting of a dude, I don't know, fucking a porcupine.
Yep.
And it's art, so it's okay. And now I've spent that money, so now I don't need
It's
to,
a high watermark now, right? So
right? Yeah.
you've spent
And
100,000, 500,000. Now there's a
mhm,
high watermark. Even if the art industry for that year pulls back a little bit,
mhm,
you give or take a couple grand, but you're now at that $500,000 marker, and over
exactly.
time it's going to head higher.
Yep. And
It's
what bugs me
crazy.
about that is I've never understood who gets to decide what artist has a piece that's worth $500,000 and which artist's piece is worth $50. And that's
I just
something
think
that
it's luck, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. I just think it's
sure.
circumstantial,
Yeah,
kind of
and like
luck, roll of
it
the
has to
dice.
do a lot more with the artist than the art. And that's the thing that's really fascinating to me because you take somebody like Banksy, right?
Yep.
Um, who as a street artist is, very famous. and makes some pretty clever pieces. I know two or three aerosol artists here in Minneapolis who I would state their technical proficiency is far superior to what you'd see in a Banksy piece, but they're not Banksy. When people buy a Banksy piece, yes, it's a clever, it's an evocative piece, but it's largely stencil work. And not to diminish stencil work, but it's because his name's attached to it. So you wind up with this idea, this cult of personality ideology, where people aren't buying art, they're buying artists.
Yes.
And so people that are willing to spend as much time cultivating a reputation within the fine art world, like that's a wonderful piece, right? But the idea is there. And that's, I guess, really the gist of modern and conceptual art is the idea that it's not about the technical level of refinement or execution. It's about having the idea and being the first one to do it.
Mm-hmm.
People walk into places like the Walker, the big modern art gallery here in Minneapolis, and they see a piece of a blue dot painted in the center of a 12-foot canvas, and they think, "Oh, well, I could do that. Why is it in
Right.
anybody could do that?"
Right.
Well, the answer is, well, that person did it.
Yep.
They
Yep.
are the one who had that thought and then moved forward with it. So
Right.
I think with NFTs, you're seeing a lot of that right now, where you have people whose pieces are selling for the fiat equivalency of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not sure if we've broken $1 million for an NFT yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
$64 million. That
$64
was
million for
Beeple.
an NFT.
Beeple.
Wow.
Yeah, Beeple
People.
sold
Yeah, people. Okay.
64 million.
Sure.
So it's out of control. But now we're talking about, like you said earlier, wealthy people looking to stash their money somewhere else.
And I
Now we
think,
have the crypto wealthy class
mhm,
looking to stick their money somewhere, outside of the speculative coins that they've appreciated in value and their wealth has attributed from. And they're doing the same thing now. But I
mhm.
want to talk about NFTrippy.
Yeah.
It's not $1 million coin. It's a
Nope.
very attainable
Hmm.
release you're doing in coordination with Facings for NFTrippy.
Yep.
Tell us about this upcoming very unique idea and concept. Just give us a little background about how this all came about.
Sure. So NFTrippy's release with us is immediately it hits so many marks for me for what I think is awesome about doing an NFT set like this. You start off with very engaging artwork. The artwork that's been created for NFTrippy is fun. It's playful. There's interesting elements. There's elements of animation, and it's colorful, and it's a happy looking set, which is nice, man. Like I deal with a lot of pretty grim and dark artwork, so seeing
Mm-hmm.
something this bright and colorful on my screen makes me feel good. The second element that I like about NFTrippy is that it's legitimately educational. The point of NFTrippy is if you sign up and you get your little mushy character, you're following him on a journey as he learns about the different types of mushrooms and active elements of psychedelic and psychotropic drugs like that, in a way that you can experience what's happening, and on a chemical level, on a legitimate scientific level. Also, it touches on the cultural history of how psychedelics have been used. It rewards your character for doing things like proper dosage. There's a crafting element to it so that you can continue to evolve. There's been articles, I don't know how intensely accurate they are. I think they're probably contested a little bit. But the use of psychedelic mushrooms is a global thing that's been heavily influenced the way that human cognition has shaped over the history of our species. This is an approach from like a dude drugs stereotypical ideology. It's like, hey, these are real things that people take. And it's not about just, going out and eating a bag full of caps in a field and, looking at the sky melt for a while. They, touch on ideas of dosage and microdosing of mushrooms is something that's being, pushed and tested by the FDA right now for things like PTSD and anxiety and depression
Mm-hmm.
and things that like we've been so dependent on, I hate the term big pharma, but on big pharma for
Mm-hmm.
treating them for so many years when there's natural antidotes that are, potentially extremely helpful and in some cases life-saving for people. And so that's like the NFTrippy set, watching it come to fruition, has been just a wonderful process to see because it utilizes all the best parts of how art interacts with the public. It's engaging visually, it's entertaining. There's a story to it that you get to follow along and participate in. Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, MAPS.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
this is an organization that this set that we're doing with NFTrippy is part of the proceeds go to MAPS to
Oh,
increase research and different open discussion and dialogue and discussing the effects of psychedelics on people from like a medical and scientific background. So you've got NFTs help add legitimacy to digital artists. A set like NFTrippy is something that's aiming to add legitimacy to the practice of psychedelics.
hmm.
And in a country where we've gotten to the point where like marijuana is legal in
Mm-hmm.
like what 38 states or something like that now,
Yep.
whereas having a bag on you in South Dakota a couple of years ago would have gotten you a 12-year prison sentence or something like that. This is something that I
Crazy.
think it's important to be involved in the forefront of because this is going to happen. It's not a question of will it, it's when it, and allowing sets like this to come out that are educational and benefit further study is a super positive way to be involved in this type of project. So,
Nice. So, what was your actual role? Did you do any of the creative? From my understanding, they did most of the
yep,
creative, correct?
they pretty much came to us with all of the parts that we needed. I believe that so NF was already in development with
Mm-hmm.
Facings before I was brought on as the lead artist. So my involvement in it over the last month or so that I've been in this position has more just been kind of supervisory, like checking up on it, seeing what's going on with it a little bit. I've been really like head down focused on crypto writers. So once we kind of wrapped up art on that a couple weeks ago, I was able to sit down and really look at everything that's involved in Trippy. And it was such a wonderful thing to open. Like I knew it was
Yeah.
there. I'd hear talks about it. I'd see it on our production boards and stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, Trippy's happening. I'm gonna have to see what's up with that once I get a
Mm-hmm.
chance. And now getting to see it is it was such a delight to open and see all the artwork and see like I've been privy to the different animations and one of the other things Trippy is doing with the set is that there's going to be I don't want to spill too many beans here, so I'll only specifically cite the thing that's already been announced. But tangible real world rewards are available if you evolve and complete a certain step. And I think that that's something with NFTs that I'm super stoked about is the merging of traditional merchandising and artistic products with NFTs. Because it creates just a stronger sense of community and immersion within any project. So
Yeah. No, that's great, and I totally agree with you. And people may ask, like, well, if Adam didn't really have much to do with this set creatively, what's the whole point of you having him on the show? Well, the thing is, guys, like, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on with these
yeah,
releases that many people don't probably think of, about, or appreciate. And one being crafting, right? Crafting the set, having different levels of rarities. Kind of explain that whole process and how you guys, because there's an art and science to that
yeah.
many people from the consumer end don't really appreciate.
Yeah, so the dev team and Drew does a lot of the set design, and then Charlie and his team go through and make it all work on a technical level as well. The crafting and gamifications in NFTs, that's where we establish things like crafting, gamification, and the set design are three elements of an NFT set that are just as essential for a unique and desirable set as making sure the art assets themselves are engaging. Because I grew up in the '90s where trading cards were huge. Like I would go to my local card and comic book shop, and I would buy X-Men cards and basketball cards were huge, and everything was really big until Magic the Gathering comes. And then that changed everything because suddenly you could collect cards, but you could also play games with your friends. And it wasn't just about collecting the coolest looking card or the rarest card, it was about collecting the right cards to interact with the rest of the ones in your set.
Right.
And so when we do set design, and this is something that I feel like Drew could talk for about hours for because it's something
Mm-hmm.
he's really passionate about, both in his position, also as a collector. He's a huge collector. This guy talks about NFT sets at a speed that is almost hard to keep up with because he's so much enthusiasm in this place. So when we're establishing rarities, we like to feature the artwork in the different sets of its development,
Mm-hmm.
but we also like to try and create variations and rares that are relevant to the content of the set. So the way with the way Trippy works, you get these different types of mushrooms, and then you also get different types of chemical compounds, and you can combine them and mix them, and then create new things. And that's something that with crafting and gamification of NFTs, that's something that's wholly unique about the NFT world is that with NFTs, your collection can interact. It's not a stagnant allocation of specific things. It's a living organism that shifts. If two people collect all of the exact same cards, it's not going to be the same collection because what they're going to choose to do with those cards are going to be unique. So as we move further into crafting and gamification, it's finding out different ways through things like mutable data within the cards that we can help push that forward so
Mm-hmm.
that your collection is something that may do things that surprise even you, the things that you don't anticipate, things that are alive in their own way. And as a collector personally, that's something that's thrilling to me. Like, this year I have a collection goal for some action figures that came out in the early 90s or the early millennium. And it's been a lot of fun hunting them down because there weren't a lot of them made. They're 20 years old, so finding them
Mm-hmm.
in new position is tricky. But as I close in on the end of the year here, and I close in on the end of the collection, once I have them all, that's it, man. Like I can put them on a shelf, I can hang them on my wall and look at them and
Right.
appreciate them. But they don't do anything. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? I can't like touch two packages together and have them
Right.
form a brand new action figure that's never existed before.
Right.
I'm not going to get a reward from the guy who created them for collecting all of them. Those things are all possible through crafting and gamification of
And so
NFT.
those are scenarios or functionalities that are going to be available in the
Yep,
NFTrippy
yep. He's
release.
got
Okay,
some of
great.
those. Yep. Where you can, the point, obviously, just collecting and seeing your collection is very cool. But I think the crux point for Trippy is going to be what you do with your collection, choices you decide to make with your avatar, Mushy, and his journey, and which chemical compounds you want to combine and use with which, different caps you're getting. And the rarity levels of certain caps are different too. Obviously, you've got your base cards, but then you've got ones that are more rare that are animated that move around, and those change when you add other things to them too. There's a lot there to dig into from a crafting and gaming viewpoint, and the artwork is psychoactive,
Nice.
for lack of a better
Yeah.
term.
Right.
But the underlying baseline that all of that stuff grows from, and that's a horrible pun because we're talking about fungi, is that it's all educational too. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's something that you're curious about or it's something you want to help educate others about, this is going to give you a baseline of from a historical and cultural perspective about where these things come from and how they play into a possible.
Oh, great, man. Adam Sword, guys, from Facings.io, talking with us about the NFTrippy release out now. So, in the description below, you can find out more information. NFTrippy.com, as you guys see it scrolling across the screen now. Very excited. I can't wait to get my hands on a couple. I'm going to go get some right now. Where can people find you other than at swordsdraws.com?
They can find me personally, Sword Draws. My name happens to be a natural palindrome to my vocation. Sworddraws.com. I'm at Sword Draws on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me um, on the Hive blog under the same name. And anywhere Facings needs somebody to come and talk about art for a while, I'll probably wind up being there too. So just make sure to
Nice.
follow Facings on the socials as well and keep up. We got a Discord channel that we're running now. We're gonna have all kinds of weekly live streams and stuff like that. So we'll be about, man. Just look for that little face and you'll find us.
Yeah, I'll leave a link in the description for all of that he just detailed, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know your thoughts about this NFT Trippy compilation, this release. I'm excited about it. I'm gonna get a couple and craft them and see what comes of them. But definitely check it out, NFTrippy.com for more information. It's your boy Crypto Blood, and that's another Kicking It session. We're out of here, people. Holla!